Thank you, Jordan. I want to add my welcome to all of you. Thank you for being with us today. Jordan did not introduce our speaker in December because it is he. And I wanted to do that very quickly. He will be speaking on the fifth and last pillar from Coach Tony Bennett, and that is servanthood. Jordan, until he came with us about 7 months ago, he had been with InterVarsity in North Carolina at Wake Forest, and primarily at UNC Chapel Hill. He has trained and served over 2,000 small group leaders. He is a young man who knows what it means to serve, and it is built into his DNA. So we asked him to be the final speaker of these five and to talk on a topic that I think is extremely pertinent in his life. So you want to make a note to be there. That is on the 13th of December. It is not here. It is at the Westwood Club. So please remember that. Now, it is my privilege to introduce our speaker. So you need to bear with me for just a second. You know, it's hard to introduce people that you've introduced many times before, but I thought perhaps...
Yes! Somebody get a picture of that.
Diane. Not quite ready yet. Not happy. And we're going to get serious about Don Happy. So, what do you think, Don? Although the hat doesn't fit. Yeah. Have you ever heard a better name of a company than Don Happy? After leading Snagajob as founder and CEO from 2000 to 2013, and then becoming its chair until November of 2015, Shawn Boyer founded Die Happy in 2015. Now, let me tell you just a little bit about Die Happy. The first thing is you want to go on their website, and it's diehappy.com. And when you do, here's some of the things you're going to see. Remember, diehappy.com. Die Happy is an app that enables you to, quote, plan and share life's moments with those who matter most. It enables you to make plans, and this is a quote right off their website. Easily plan those we shoulds and some days with your favorite people. Because they're important, Die Happy enables us to be intentional about what matters most to the most important people in your life. Live a life you love with the people you love. DieHappy.com. Check it out. It's exciting. Plus, you've got great swag. Right?
I think
More?
so. That's fantastic.
Shawn, in 2008, Shawn Boyer was named as the National Small Business Person of the Year, and he was awarded that commendation from President George W. Bush. He is a frequent speaker regarding living a purposeful life and building a great workplace culture and rapidly scaling businesses, and has appeared in many, many journals and places, and even on live television in different settings, news settings. He's a graduate of the College of William & Mary and a graduate of WNL Law School, and has recently sat on such boards as Snagajob, Montage Talent, the Marshall Foundation as a board member, the Richmond Forum, and most recently, and for me most excitedly, he is the newest addition to the board of directors of Needle's Eye Ministries. Help me welcome Shawn Boyer.
Thank you, buddy. All right, let me flip this on. Not that you probably need it in here. Thank you, buddy. I knew at some point you said you were going to wear the hat, so but I didn't realize you were going to wear it today.
They were going to do it, but they've taken pictures of that. I think I'm not too excited about that.
Buddy always busts on me because of my casual dress, and so whenever I come to something like this, he always makes sure that he looks at me to see if I'm dressed appropriately or not. So anyway, I do feel like I'm about ready to get an EKG with all of these mics on, which my wife would probably be happy if I did go and get one. But anyway, thank you very much for allowing me to come speak today. It's a topic that I am very passionate about, and you know, again, especially like what Jordan was saying with what's going on in the country. Not that what I'm going to talk about today has to do with the country, but unity is obviously a topic of concern right now. And if you did go online right now and didn't type in diehappy.com, but instead did a Google search for Die Happy, you'd probably see things like, I could die happy if I moved to Canada. I can now die happy because she didn't win. I die happy if I don't see one of my Facebook friends saying they're going to unfriend some other friend because of what they just posted about him or her or whatever it might be. But anyway, thanks to Buddy for the nice intro to Die Happy. So unity. If you go look up the Merriam-Webster definition of unity, or at least one of them or not, they talk about it being a state or quality of being one. And so for me, when I think about unity, I think about it from the perspective within an organization. And what does it mean to be unified within an organization? And again, I know you can take an organization to scale all the way up to a country, but thinking about it more appropriately for our purposes as the organization with which you work, the company with which you work, the team which you're a part of, right, DJ? DJ's here today, baseball player at U of R. But when you think about what that means there, I think about it as being a cohesive team. And when you think about, okay, well, what does it mean to be a cohesive team? There are several different components of it that I walk through, but it's a small group of people who have a common purpose, who have a shared approach to what they're doing, who then hold themselves mutually accountable to that shared approach and to those set of performance goals, whatever those are. And so for me, the best way to think about that cohesive team is the Patrick Lencioni model, which is a model that we firmly embraced at Snag a Job. Have any of you ever read Patrick Lencioni's stuff? It is now used by, or at least has been used by 80+% of the Fortune 500 companies. It's sold over 2 million copies, this book that I'm going to talk about. And the book that he wrote that addresses how to become a cohesive team is called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. So he takes the approach of, okay, what does dysfunction look like within an organization? If you can get rid of those dysfunctions, what does that mean to your organization? How do you operate as this cohesive team? And so anyway, that's what I want to be able to walk through today. And I think the reason why it's so darn important is if you look at the organizations out there that have had success, or teams out there that have had success, almost to a entity, they have a cohesive team. Not all of them. But again, in business or in anything that we're doing, it's like, okay, well, I can't control everything. None of us can, obviously. But to the degree to which you can control that stuff, you want to be able to. And so you can control having a cohesive team in large part. And the organizations that have failed, or at least have had suboptimal performance, it is almost always lacking, having that cohesive team. And one of the things, too, I love about Lencioni's approach, and again, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with him or not, but he's a strong Christian, and it has biblical underpinnings, too. And I'm not sure where everybody is in the room with respect to their faith or not. And look, these principles, in my opinion, they work regardless of whether you're a Christian and where you are in that faith journey or not. But to me, one of the cool things is that they really do have these biblical underpinnings to them. So that's how I think about a cohesive team, why it's important. And so my flip chart here, there are 5 components. I don't know if everybody can see or not, but I'll say them out loud. And each of these build on one another in order for you to have that cohesive team, okay? The first one is trust, okay? And again, he approaches it from this dysfunction, so it's when there is a lack of trust. If you have trust, though, within the organization, then you can actually have good conflict. And I know a lot of times we hear conflict, they go, well, that's bad, we want to all live in harmony with one another, and as a team we want to be harmonious and not have conflict, but it's good conflict. That's what he's shooting for. And if you have that, then as a team, you can get commitment. And this unadulterated commitment to what it is that the team is deciding. We're going to walk through each of these 5 things. If you get that commitment, then you can have accountability. And again, it's the mutual accountability to one another as peers. And then if you have that accountability, then you produce the results that you want as a team. Or again, you give yourself a better likelihood of producing the results that you want as a team. And again, every organization wants results, right? And so the first one, trust, is by far and away the most important. Because again, they're building blocks on each other. And if you don't get the trust thing right, nothing else happens the way it should. And the way he talks about it is vulnerable trust. And so we started working at Snagajob. We started working with Patrick Lencioni's consulting firm back in, I guess, 2010. And we then worked with them for the next 4 years, I guess, and just loved their approach. And that trust piece of it has, in my opinion, 2 components to it, okay? There's the first piece of, when you're talking about vulnerable trust, of looking inward, okay? And the second piece is more outward. And the inward piece is that I'm going to admit what my weaknesses are. I'm going to admit when I make errors. I'm going to show people what's going on in my life even outside of just work. I'm just going to be open, right? And it is so counter. I don't know how you all feel about this, but I remember when they came in, for so many of the people that we had just hired onto our senior leadership team, which is who they were working with, we had to hire in people from outside. People who had been at big companies, because we had been a small company, and then we had raised a couple rounds of capital, and it was, okay, we got to get the people in here who've been there, done that before. And these people bring with them all the baggage, whether good or bad, from wherever it is that they've been. But it's just so counter-cultural for most people to talk about what they're not good at, to admit when they screw up, to say that they apologize for whatever it might be. And so again, there's this whole mode of just self-preservation. And so that's the first part. Bless you. That's the first part. And again, the biblical underpinnings here are do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but rather in humility value others above yourselves, right? And in this case, the valuing others above yourself is when I'm admitting what it is that I'm not good at. I know somebody can take that and use that against me, especially if I'm the first person to open up like that on my leadership team, right? Or whatever team it is that you're a part of. And so that first person to go do it, man, it takes some spine, right, to put yourself out there to do it, because you just know, man, if I say that I'm not good at math and I'm the CFO, what are they going to say? That may not be a great example, but really, there are CFOs that they can't do the math in their head, but they're great CFOs, right? But who would ever admit that? Nobody, most people aren't. But again, if it's for the good of the team, then you're going to admit that kind of thing. And you're going to get those weaknesses out there so that other people can rally around you and help you with whatever those things are. They're going to help you hire people onto your team who can. The second piece of it is the outward piece, which is actually wanting to get to know and getting to know the other people on the team on a personal level, and valuing them as people, not just a cog in the wheel on your team, not just it's Dave, my CFO, and I need him to do X, Y, Z for me, and if he doesn't, then he's not the right CFO, and if he does, then he's the right CFO. But it is getting to know Dave as a person in his life outside of just work. And again, it ends up just being so countercultural to what most organizations say is, look, you gotta, work is work, and the relationships are what they are outside of work, and you need to keep a distance. And I remember we had a board member at Snagajob who had, grown basically a nothing kind of company, went out and acquired a gazillion other different companies, created this $4 billion company. And so he had been there, done that before. And I remember him telling me, he's like, Shawn, you're way too close to your people. You're too good of friends with your people. And I know what he was saying. He was saying, hey, look, you don't want to get so close to them that you can't hold them accountable to the things for which you need to be able to hold them accountable, right? But in his mind, you couldn't do both. You couldn't actually get close to Elizabeth and value Elizabeth and pray for Elizabeth and love on Elizabeth and hold her accountable. From his perspective, you just can't do both. Or maybe it complicates it too much so that you don't do that. But I firmly believe in that whole adage of people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And so if you can show people that, look, I care about you as a person, Yes, I'm going to hold you accountable to the things that you signed up for, and you said, okay, I can do this in this month or this quarter or whatever it might be. But at the same time, I love you, and being able to tell somebody that, so that they're opening up to you about what's going on in their life outside of work, so that you can be asking about those things, and you've gotten to know their family, and you can tell them that you're praying for them whenever they're going through tough times. That's the way God wants us to do things, I think. But even outside of that, even if you're not a Christian, you don't care about that part, it drives engagement. I mean, you look at the Gallup surveys, only 32% of employees are engaged. 50% are unengaged. 17% are actively disengaged. And the biggest factor that will drive that engagement is having a leader, my manager, whoever that is, who cares about me as a person. Trumps everything else. And so even if you don't care about the biblical piece of it, just showing those people that I care about you as a person gets them engaged in your organization. And when you're engaged, you're a heck of a lot more productive than what you are, certainly than when you're unengaged, and certainly when you're actively disengaged, where you're basically rowing the opposite direction of where you're trying to get people to go. And so those two pieces, that inward piece of opening up, especially if you're the leader on your team, the organization, you can so set the tone, right? You be the first one to be throwing out there that, you know what, I stink at this. I messed this up, whatever it might be. I apologize for losing my temper the other day, and I raised my voice and I shouldn't have. I mean, those kinds of things are worth their weight in gold. And then two, showing those other people on your team how much you care about them, and really caring about them, obviously. So that's the first piece on trust. And if you have that level of vulnerable trust amongst your team, you can then get to good conflict. And I've seen it, I'm sure all of us have, right? We've seen when there is a lack of trust so that you can't actually get to good conflict, right? I mean, we had two people on our team for a while, and I'll just contrast them, and they kind of were on two different teams, and they would butt heads at times. But the one person came from a large organization, and it was really cover your rear at that organization, and probably the organization before that, frankly. And so whenever there was something that involved her and her team, it was self-preservation mode. Never admit when there was something that was going wrong. Never, when it was budget time and everybody had to ante up with, okay, I'll concede here, concede there. She always was in self-preservation mode for her team. And man, but she was, outside of that, at the X's and O's part, she was awesome. But it just caused us as an organization to take 2 steps forward and you take 1 step back because there was not that trust amongst the team. And I contrast that with another person who was on our team who had much less experience than what she did, but she came in with this very humble spirit and readily admitted to stuff that she did not know, but was always curious and would admit her mistakes, her errors immediately. And she ended up building one of the best teams in the organization, was a great team player for us. So anyway, I just, you contrast that with the one who's got the resume of, all resumes, right, who seemingly should come in and just do an awesome job. But if you don't have that vulnerable level of trust, it just screws everything else up. So if you have that trust, though, then you can get to what is good conflict. And good conflict is nothing more than passionate, unfiltered debate to get to the collective truth, right? And so it's not bad, right? If you look at it on a spectrum of things, it's not way over here where it's the personal attacks and it's just, I've got to win at all costs because it's my idea and whatever I'm thinking in my own mind, that's what it is that we have to be able to do. It's not that, right? On the other side of the spectrum, though, it's not sitting there passively at the table and nobody willing to speak up because you're afraid that it might cause some disharmony, right? And, well, I don't want to say that, right? Because that's different than what the leader just said or different than what Joe just said over here. And so I'm just going to sit here. But you're thinking in your mind the whole time, that's a stupid idea, right? That guy's a moron. Why would we ever go do that? If we go do that, we're going to fail. We'll never optimize what our opportunity is, right? So you don't want that where you just sit there. It's in the middle. And so 3 things to me that if you're going to have good conflict, you have to have, right? And this is probably true, and my wife is here, so she'll bring this back on me later at what will, for me, be an inopportune time. But the conflict, the first part of it is listen. Right? And this one's a hard one for me because you're sitting there and this debate's going on at the table, right? Wherever your meeting is or whatever it might be. And I'm listening to Tom, right? And I'm thinking in my mind, I've got a response to what Tom just said, right? And I've got the reason why what it is that he's saying really won't work, or I've got some add-on to his. And I just lost the last 2 sentences of what Tom just said, right? And so that art/science, whatever you want to call it, of actively listening to the other people's opinions, right? I mean, heck, you go back again to the political drama. If people actually just sat and listened to people, how great would that be? SNL's got like the next 4 years covered, especially Palin. Regardless of where you sit on the political spectrum, Alex Baldwin and Tina Fey have full-time jobs for the next 4 years if Palin gets into the cabinet. Anyway, oh, okay, sorry, I missed that. I guess that happened this morning. Anyway, SNL still has lots of fodder. But it's actively listening to what the other side is, right? And it is, a fool is only listening to himself and thinks his way is always right. But the wise seek out the counsel of others, right? And so it's not just feigning that you're listening, right? Or feigning, hey, Tom, what do you think of this, right? Because I just know that'll make Tom feel good if I ask him that, right? But it is truly actively listening to what he's saying. The second thing is not having a spirit of timidity. It is when you're sitting there and you're worried about if I vocalize what it is that I think that we should do or my opinion on this thing, that somebody's going to get irritated at me or frustrated at me because I'm disagreeing with something that somebody else just said. That's not what you were hired for in your job, right? You were hired for that job because somebody respected your opinion, or they should have, right? And if they don't really listen to it, then maybe you need to second guess whether or not you're at the right place, right? But it is, no matter who you are on the team, if you're in that room, one of your main roles is participate and be vocal about what it is that you're thinking in those scenarios. If not, you're not getting to the collective truth, right? You're getting to some, just partial truth, right? Because you really only heard part of the group's thinking on that. And then the third thing is, again, to make sure that whatever it is that you're debating and the mindset from which you're coming at this from, it is for the collective good of that organization, right? It is not because it was my idea, and none of us do this intentionally, right? It just, I don't think at least, it just kind of happens subconsciously because in your mind, your idea was so awesome, right? Or my opinion on this is so right that if you're not intentional about that not happening, it just subconsciously happens where you're so oriented towards what your opinion is that you can't step back and think about, okay, what is best for the organization in this situation? And again, I think if we have that mindset of, okay, what truly is the best for the organization in this particular scenario, then that conflict ends up being rich, good conflict. So that's the conflict piece. If you have this unfiltered, passionate debate for that collective truth, then it makes it a heck of a lot more likely that you can then go get good commitment, right? Where the commitment is that, okay, we all sat around here, we all got our ideas out on the table, we debated it, and now we're coming to a decision, and now it's all hands in, and we're all on the same team, and what we walk away from this with is what we have decided as a team. And if you don't have the good conflict, right, going back to the scenario with Tom, and if I was the person who just sat there, maybe there's one other person on the team too, right, and we were both sitting there and we were listening to what Tom was saying, and Tom's the leader, right, and he was, saying, well, we should do this or that, and I was like, man, that's just, again, it's not a good idea, and this other person was sitting there thinking that's not a good idea, and then Tom's like, okay, everybody in? And you're like, yeah. And the other person's like, yeah, I'm in. Well, what happens? When you leave there, me and the other person, right, are like, dude, can you believe what we just decided? What is Tom thinking? Why are we doing that? there's this other competitor doing this same thing, or, so-and-so is never going to go for that, or, whatever it might be, right? We didn't get firm commitment because we never did have the good conflict. And so once we have sat there and had that passionate, unfiltered debate, come to a decision, it has to be all hands in. And that takes humility, right? Which I know is one of the other pillars, but it just does take humility to actually put my hand in, agree to something that may not be what my recommendation was, right? It wasn't the recommendation that I spent 18 hours on a presentation about that we should go do, and I felt so passionate about, and now we've ended up deciding to go do this other thing. And so it takes humility to be able to go do that. And the other thing I would say is a gossip separates the closest of friends. And it certainly can derail a team, right? Because again, if me and let's say Derek here, after Tom has made that decision and we supposedly made this decision as a team, and we go away and then we start talking about it, or maybe even my team, right? I spent 18 hours on this presentation. I just didn't do it by myself. I had my marketing team with me, and we worked on it together because we were also passionate about it being the right way to go do this. So I go back to my marketing team afterwards, and like, okay, how'd it go? What did Tom say? It's like, well, we're not doing what we decided. I know it was the right thing, guys, and I know you all believe that, but Tom railroaded it. And we're going to go do his thing. I know we don't think it's going to work, but we got to just go along with it because that's what he decided, right? Or, me and this other guy are talking about what an idiot he is, right? And so we each go and maybe only tell a couple people that Tom's an idiot, but it's really not just a couple people, right? It ends up being like 18 people and then half the company. And then what happens? Those teams are talking about what a stupid decision we made, and they're not working against it. Again, you go back to the engagement piece, they're not working all rowing in the same direction as what the organization needs you to be able to go do, because there was no commitment, and people are, in essence, gossiping about the decision that was made about how it wasn't the ideal one. It just can't, and in my opinion, it just can't happen that way. It has to be that, hey, yes, we spent 18 hours on that presentation. I know we felt like it was the right thing, but you know what? When we sat there in that room, and we debated it, a lot of other great opinions were expressed and some different ways to look at it. And as a team, we ended up deciding that that's the best direction we should go. And I am all for it, gang. I'm 100% behind it, And you have to really believe it and do that. And if it's something unethical that the team has decided or whatever, right, you can't get behind that, right? That's different. I'm talking about where it's within, the bounds of, that whole realm of it being ethical and non-immoral and that kind of thing. But once that decision is made, it has to be gung-ho. I would say that for those people who are the leaders of those teams where you're having that supposedly passionate, unfiltered debate, don't go first with your opinion. Again, I don't know how you all feel about that, but I know for me, I can point to a great example. We were growing nicely at Snag a Job. This is 2011. And we went out and we raised, well, I'll back up. Before we even raised a big slug of capital for this particular initiative, I felt like we needed to put our foot on the pedal, grow more quickly. I had this idea in my mind as to how we might be able to go do that. And I basically did not go out and solicit the opinions of everybody else in a way that was open enough for them to really give me that in an unfiltered way. And I ended up making probably the biggest error that I made there. We raised a slug of capital for this particular initiative. We went all out on it, and it didn't work. It just flat out didn't work. It was a waste of money. We had hired a lot of people that then we ended up having to lay off or repurpose because of it, and it stunk. It was awful. It was by far the worst experience that I had. But as I look back on it, I'm like, you know what? Why didn't I, even if I had the idea, you take it before the team and you say, guys, here's what I'm thinking. Let's talk about why it might work, and then poke holes in it. And we got to the point where we would actually appoint a devil's advocate in the room. Their role, and we had rotated around, their role was to go poke holes in it. And you couldn't, my tendency would be, stop being a naysayer, right? Come on, where's your optimism? We got to just plow our way through this, right? But you really do need somebody to be poking holes and stuff, at least so that you go in with eyes wide open as, okay, here are the 18 reasons why it could go wrong, and you know what those are, and you can kind of box them. So anyway, for me at least, I think it's just so important to not, as the leader, be the one who goes first and says all the reasons why it should work and end up railroading the conversation. That if you have commitment, then you can have accountability. And a mutual accountability, and that accountability goes back to we're accountable to one another, right? It's not just the leader who is holding everybody accountable. It is us as peers, right? And you have great different examples of that in Galatians where, Paul went and held Peter accountable, for different things. And so, again, with any basketball team, right? If we're talking to Coach Bennett, he would probably say, look, my best teams are teams where the captains and the other people on the team are holding each other accountable. It's not just me as the coach saying, London, do this, or, why'd you screw this up over here? I mean, it's them holding each other accountable as a team. And then the fifth thing is, if you have that mutual accountability, then again, you get the results. And the results aren't that me and my marketing team drove the amount of traffic to the website that we needed, or me as the sales team, we hit our quota for the month, or me as the finance team, we closed out our books, on the date that we were supposed to, or whatever it might be. But it is, the not good results is that I win if my team is winning, my respective department team is winning or whatever, but we only win if the company's winning. That's the only time I view myself as being a winner. And again, it's the same thing is true with teams, right? It's not that, okay, well, I was elected all conference this year, all pro or whatever it might be. It's that, okay, we as a team achieved the results that we set out to achieve. And so this one is almost a given if you get these other four right. But you can't have the people on the team, again, that look at it as it being a positive result just if they got out of it what they wanted to be able to get out of it. And, to me, when I think about this model, right, and you think about the founding of the church, right, and, I mean, Christianity, and I would say, is the best startup success story that there's ever been, right? I mean, you start out with 12 people, 12 people, and now it's 2.2 billion Christians across the world, and that has stood the test of time over thousands of years. And, if you go and you look at how the church has operated over time, not that it always gets it right, obviously, but from those early days, they hit each of those different 5 building blocks over time. And so, again, I think that if we approach unity or a cohesive team from this approach, it gives our organizations, I think, a heck of a lot better chance for success. Again, certainly doesn't guarantee it, but from my perspective, I think it gives us a much better chance. So, anyway, that's what I want to talk about on the unity and cohesive team front. So, buddy, I don't know how we're doing on time.
We are going to go a little bit longer because of starting a little later due to the Willie Bridge incident, but if you need to leave, feel free to do that. We'll go for another 10 minutes or so with Q&A, and then I'll wrap it up after Shawn. So we need a question to start. Once we have the first, it usually flows after that. Please feel free to ask Shawn any question about what you've heard today, and who will get us started?
Shawn, question.
Mr. Fitch.
Have you ever had a situation where an employee was a real team player and really fit in nicely and was a good people person, but she just totally loved her job and kept loving it? And the supervisor, was saying, we just got to get her out of here. Have you ever had that situation? How did you handle it? She was, I'd say, a person that was really valuable to the team, but couldn't handle that particular situation.
Yeah. No, I never did.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Right. You've got those two. Yeah, you've got those two sides of the spectrum, right? Where you've got people like that, and you've got the other people who, are nailing their KPIs, right? But they just are not living and breathing the culture at all. And so on that one, those are the hard ones, I think.
That was the most difficult for me.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that they're jerks and they're hitting their KPIs, I mean, you have the conversations with them. If they don't shift their, behaviors, then, it's easier to let them go, right?
Yeah.
But the people who are sweet and, good team players, they live and breathe the culture and everything, but they don't hit the KPIs, those are hard. But I still think that in order to be fair to the organization and to everybody else, if you've sat down with those people, and it all starts with setting what the objectives are up front, and if you've sat down with them and collectively set what those objectives are, and he or she has not consistently met those, then I just don't think it's fair to the rest of the team and to the rest of the organization to keep those people on. And and it's not just one time that they miss it, right? I don't think it's that you're having these conversations with them, and as they miss it, it's, hey, you didn't hit it this quarter. Next quarter I really need you to hit them, and if you don't, then you're going on a performance plan. And so I think just that candor back and forth with those people, and again, just being really clear about what the objectives are up front. Because I think what happens is, if you don't deal with it, then the rest of the team, the rest of the organization, it ends up demoralizing them, because they see it, right? They probably see it before you see it, I think. I mean, for most of, at least my experiences, people were seeing something before I ever saw it. And then would wonder, okay, why did it take you so long, right?
I was putting it off and off.
Yeah.
Dan.
No, it stinks.
Shawn, great comments. So I'm going to start. Hear me. So talk about, if you would, Shawn, managing the conflict conversation, and how do you manage that conversation without eroding trust?
Yeah, I think, and again, so first, there can't be any personal attacks in the conflict. It has to be from the perspective of, look, we are trying to get everybody's viewpoints out on the table so that we as a team end up making the best decision that we can. And some people are just more ready to give you their opinions than what other people are, right? And so part of our job as leaders and part of our jobs as members of the team, I think, is to, again, getting down to the trust level, to have gotten to know those people up front, right? Because hopefully if we've done a good enough job getting to know one another, that I know that, okay, well, Dan's a little hesitant to give me his viewpoints, but Dave is very vocal about what his are. And so I need to make sure that I am very proactive in going to Dan and saying, hey, Dan, you've been kind of quiet over there. I want to know what you're thinking. What do you think is good about this? What do you think is bad about this? And, again, that may be just one example within that whole realm of conflict. But I just think it's up to the leader to consistently be pulling out from people what it is they think. And I think the more the team gets into the rhythm of doing that, the more that then just becomes how they work. But I would say, though, that the thing that'll screw it up worse than everything else is when it starts to become a personal attack. It's, dude, no wonder your wife left you. I mean, or whatever it might be. You can't get into that kind of thing. Because that then absolutely degrades the trust level.
Another question or two? Yes, sir.
So with trust being the foundational thing of the pyramid there, what quick things would you suggest as to how to maximize the trust being in place with your team members through the recruiting and hiring process?
Yeah, I think that, so in the recruiting and hiring piece, I think it's just so critically important to know what the values of your organization are, and to just make sure that you are absolutely convinced that those people, especially those leaders that you're bringing into the organization, check the box on the value side. No matter how great their resumes look, it is that I don't have 1 ounce of me that questions whether or not they check the box on the values, because I don't know about you all, but whenever we had questions about somebody with respect to the values piece, and we saw it in the interview, or that recruitment process, it ended up biting us in the rear. And they're like, you know what? I saw it, and we went forward anyway because I had to have somebody in that role, and their resume was so great, the references are so great. So I think it starts with that. But then the other thing is that on that trust piece is it's spending time with one another in non-work settings, right? And I'm not talking about, well, you got to go out to dinner together all the time and take time away from your family, but it is taking time to just go spend with one another. I think there's some great exercises to go through with the team just so that you really are opening up and becoming more vulnerable. You know, I mean, heck, we used to do this exercise that inevitably, and we go out and still do it with different teams now, inevitably somebody, if not everybody's crying at the table where you're talking about what was it like to grow up in your house? And all of a sudden, I don't know if you guys ever listened to any of Rick Warren's stuff, but like there was just one of his most recent podcasts is we tend to get annoyed by the people who we really don't know, and we don't know why they're acting the way they're acting because we didn't ever get to know what their childhood was like, and their childhood was just a mess and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, going through an exercise like that, and it just starts to make you have more empathy and an understanding for the people and why they are the way they are. And so anyway, I mean, it's just an example. I just think that spending time together outside of just in a meeting where everybody's, you know, so focused on what it is that we have to achieve for that particular meeting is helpful to get to know one another, where people do start to feel more trust, going to dinners together or lunches together, or whatever it might be. So,
One more. Yes, sir.
Shawn, do you think you could substitute the word relationship for commitment?
how so?
Basically what you just said about understanding a person's history, their perspective, respecting their lens on reality.
Yeah,
So that you basically know that this is not Shawn being cruel to me.
right.
That's who Shawn is.
Yeah.
I need him to understand who I am.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely. And again, when you have that appreciation, whether you agree with the person or not, right? It's having an appreciation from where that person is coming. And if you do that, then again, I can then have much better debate with you because I'm actually appreciating where you're coming from. I'm not just thinking that, you know, what an idiot. Why is he thinking about it from this way or that way or whatever it might be? So that again, you can have that better conflict. The commitment piece to me though is really when it is, okay, now we've had this level of debate, we've got to make a decision and go forward. Whether or not that means that we're going to punt on, you know, the actual decision to go do this thing or not, and we're going to say, okay, we're going to give ourselves another 2 months or whatever it might be. I know you talked about some of the bridge builders luncheon, but it is as a team deciding, okay, here is our decision. And then once you do that, everybody's on the same page, and there can't be any of the going off then and talking about, you know, with other people, you know, why we made that bad decision, right? It just, I think, I mean, it really dilutes the impact that the organization can then have. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Thanks, Shawn. Let's give him another round.